Hi everyone, it's Laura Volpes for Studio Katia, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to create an easy birthday card for a boy using the Cobby Bearing Gifts stamp set. To start off the card, I started working on the focal panel, for which I will be using my alcohol inks on some Yupo paper. The paper is a little bit warped because I didn't store it properly, but it's not going to be a problem at all. I started creating my focal panel by adding some alcohol ink blending solution by Ranger to this panel of Yupo paper, and then I dropped in a little bit of turquoise alcohol ink as well as some cloudy blue alcohol ink. And as you can see, I am moving the paper around so that the inks will move. And as you can see, because the paper is warped, I am getting pooling in some areas, so I decided to wear some gloves to protect my hands and be able to move the pigments around. I cleaned off my mat, I added just a few more drops of that blending solution, and then I put my panel aside to dry while I started working on my images. The stamp set I will be using today is the Cobby Bearing Gifts stamp set, and this is the perfect one for a birthday card. I think it's really fun and cute. I am stamping my images with Memento Tuxedo black ink using my Mini Misty on some Nina Solar White 110 pound cardstock. And because I got a bit of ink smudged inside the balloon, I'm using my Tombow Mono eraser to fix this mistake, and no one will ever know. For my coloring today, I decided to use my Spectrum Noir markers. I am coloring Cobby as if he was white, so I am shading him with some cool gray markers. The darkest marker is the IG3, and then I tried to blend it out with the IG1, but that was running a little bit dry, so I instead opted for the IG2. I darkened my shadows with a second layer of that IG3 marker, and then came in with the colorless blender to blend everything out. To color the presents, I opted for some greens, and I used 3 different color combinations. The first one, which is the one that I'm using now, is GT3, GT2 and GT1, and this is more of a blue-green. The second one, which is more of a true green, is LG5, LG3 and LG2. And finally, the third one, which is more of a yellow-green, is CG3, CG2 and CG1. I used these 3 colors to color in different areas in the presents and create a fun look. And I went for some greens because I felt they would match nicely with the background that I have prepared with my alcohol inks. I will now leave you with some music while I color the rest of the presents. The coloring today is really simple. It's a basic 3 shades blending, and if you want to slow down the video, you can use the YouTube tools to do so that you can watch the coloring in more detail. Once I was done coloring the images, I die cut them with the coordinating dies, and then I went ahead and also die cut 2 different panels out of some white cardstock using the Darling Ribbon and Frames dies, as well as the Dotted Patterns Set 3 dies. I heat embossed the sentiment Hooray from that same Cobby Bearing Gifts stamp set. I embossed it with white embossing powder over some black cardstock, and I used my guillotine trimmer to cut it into a thin strip. At this point, my alcohol ink background was completely dry, so I could go ahead and die cut my focal panel out of it. And for that I used another die in the Dotted Patterns Set 3 Creative Dies by Studio Katia, which cuts this nice oval shape. And now all my elements are ready and I can go ahead and start assembling the card. To adhere the focal panel on the smaller of the 2 white die-cut rectangles, I used some double-sided adhesive. This is some nice and strong adhesive, and I'm sure that it will keep my panel nice and flat on the background and will compensate for the warping that I had created on my Yupo paper. Because the design and the layout are pretty simple, I decided to spice the card up a little bit with some dimension. So I'm going to pop up the image of Cobby over 1 layer of foam tape. And I'm going to use 1 layer of foam tape also to adhere the front rectangle on the back one. Once I have that in place, I can glue down my images. I positioned Cobby slightly off-centered on my focal panel to create some interest, and then I completed the scene with the balloon, which I glued down on 1 layer of foam tape, and the present and this little card that I glued down flat on the background. Because I wanted a continuous dotted detail all over my card front, I die cut my sentiment with the rectangle die in the Darling Ribbon and Frames dies. I measured the size of the sentiment banner against my card front. I trimmed off the excess with my scissors, and then I used a tiny strip of foam tape as well as some Studio Katia glue to glue down the sentiment on my card. I could not resist and I had to add a little bit of glitter, so I coated the balloon as well as 2 of the presents with my Spectrum Noir clear overlay pen. And to finish off the front of my card, I added some Studio Katia crystals. These are the May crystals and have a nice shade of green that works perfectly with the color palette that I have going on my card front. When I add embellishments to my cards, I like to play around with the positioning a little bit, and then when I find an arrangement that I like, I actually go ahead and glue them down. And to adhere these ones, I am using a Duo Picker and the Studio Katia glue, which is perfect for embellishments. I really like decorating the inside of my cards, and for this one I decided to stamp the balloon in 3 different colors of Distress Oxides that match the color scheme that I have on the front of the card. So I used Mermaid Lagoon, Lucky Clover and Twisted Citron. And then I stamped the sentiment Happy Birthday, also from the Cobby Bearing Gifts stamp set with Memento Tuxedo black ink. The card base, by the way, measures 5.5 by 8.5 inches and it's scored at 4.25 inches, so that we have a top folding A2 card base in landscape orientation. I am using some double-sided adhesive and my Mini Misty to adhere the card front to the card base, and that finished off my card. And here you can see the final result. Really fun and perfect for a boy. And that's it for today. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video and I hope I inspired you to create with the Cobby Bearing Gifts stamp set. Don't forget to subscribe to the Studio Katia channel for more inspiration. Thank you all so much for stopping by and have a great day.